I want to start this deep dive with a visual that is honestly a little ridiculous.
Okay.
When you think of Bruce Lee, what do you see? You see the yellow jumpsuit from...
Same with death? Yeah.
Right. Yellow jumpsuit, the nunchucks, the high-pitched battle cry. Maybe you picture him taking down 20 guys in a dojo.
It's iconic. I mean, it's the definition of an action hero.
Exactly. But for our conversation today, I want you to take that image, the deadliest man on the planet, and I want you to put him in a boarding school dormitory.
Wow. Yeah.
Picture Bruce Lee not fighting a villain, but standing in line for the shower in a communal bathroom. Or picture him sitting in a prep room trying to write an essay on Hamlet while his roommate is just loudly eating chips 3 feet away.
It's a completely jarring juxtaposition.
Yeah.
You've got this ultimate disciplined warrior dropped into, well, let's be honest, the total chaos of teenage communal living.
It really is. And that is the actual premise of the source material we are diving into today. The piece is titled, What a Boarder Can Learn from Bruce Lee. And I have to admit, when I first saw this in our stack of materials, I rolled my eyes a little bit.
You thought it was a self-defense manual or something.
I totally did. I thought, okay, is this going to be an article about how to roundhouse kick a bully behind the gym?
Which would be terrible advice for a school setting.
Absolutely terrible advice. You'd get expelled immediately. But as I read through it, I realized I was completely wrong. This isn't about fighting physically at all. It's entirely about philosophy.
Right.
The source argues that Bruce Lee's approach to martial arts, specifically this concept of self-mastery, is actually the perfect cheat code for surviving and thriving in a boarding school.
And cheat code is such a great way to put it because, boarding school is a weird environment. It's a pressure cooker. You're living where you learn, you're surrounded by your peers 24/7, and there is almost zero privacy. The source makes this really interesting point, that boarding is a laboratory for character.
A laboratory where things can occasionally explode.
Sometimes, definitely. But the core argument here is that the exact skills Lee used to master his body and his mind are the exact same skills you need to navigate that laboratory.
We're talking about focus, emotional control, and authenticity.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to unpack this. We're going to look at why your biggest opponent in school isn't actually who you think it is, how you can avoid what the source calls the boarding trap, and why doing nothing might be the hardest discipline of all.
Let's dive right in.
All right, let's start with the core philosophy. The document leads with this pretty heavy concept. Your greatest opponent is not another person, it is yourself.
That is the foundation. Honestly, if you don't get this, you don't get Bruce Lee.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second here. If I'm a student, right, and I have a teacher who seemingly hates me, or a roommate who plays extremely loud music at 1 in the morning, or a rival on the soccer team who plays dirty.
It really feels like the opponent is external.
Yeah, it feels exactly like it's me against them.
Of course it feels that way. That's the default human setting, right? We externalize the struggle. If I'm unhappy, it's because of that person over there, this stupid rule.
Right.
But the source material is asking us to completely flip that. Lee believed that the external world is really just a mirror.
A mirror.
Yeah. So if you get angry at the roommate, the problem isn't actually the roommate. The problem is your lack of patience. Or if you're stressed about the teacher, the problem is your own anxiety or your lack of preparation.
That is a tough pill to swallow because it basically removes your right to complain.
It absolutely does. It puts the responsibility 100% on you.
Yeah.
And the source connects this to a really big myth about Bruce Lee. We look at him and we say, well, he was a genius. He was a prodigy. He was just born with that insane speed.
Right. It's the talent excuse. I can't be like him because I'm simply not talented.
Exactly. But the source completely busts that myth. It details how Lee wasn't just magically talented. He was obsessively disciplined. He became exceptional through daily repetition, reflection, and just grinding it out.
And this is where we get to the practical stuff for a boarder, because the source translates self-mastery into some really mundane, honestly boring things.
Extremely mundane.
Yeah, let's talk about those, because they aren't glamorous martial arts moves. The first one is literally just getting out of bed.
The daily battle of the alarm clock.
Right. But is that really self-mastery? It just feels like waking up.
Think about the psychology of it, though. The alarm goes off. It's dark outside. The bed is super warm. Your brain, that internal opponent we talked about, is screaming at you. Just 5 more minutes. It's freezing out there. You're exhausted.
Yeah, I know that voice well.
We all do. That moment right there is the very first fight of the day.
So if you hit the snooze button, you've essentially lost the first round.
You've surrendered to comfort. And the source argues that if you can't win that tiny, tiny battle with your own pillow, how on earth are you going to win the battle when you're physically exhausted on the sports field? Or when you're struggling with a really difficult math exam?
It's about building a habit of overcoming resistance.
Precisely.
Resistance. I actually really like that word in this context. It's like lifting weights, but for your willpower.
That's a great analogy. And the source extends the same idea to prep, time, the study hall.
Yeah.
It points out the massive difference between just sitting in the chair versus actually using the time.
Oh man, I was the absolute king of sitting in the chair back in school. I could look incredibly busy for 2 hours and get absolutely nothing done.
And that's the internal opponent striking again. That's procrastination and lack of focus disguising itself as hard work.
Wow.
The source says real self-mastery is engaging fully. It's looking after your physical and mental health, not because a teacher or a matron told you to, but because you are proactively maintaining your own machine.
So the real takeaway here is that these small, entirely unglamorous actions, getting up, eating right, actually studying when you sit down to study, they aren't just chores, they are your training.
They are the reps. Repeating them every single day is what builds a strong and confident person. You don't get genuine confidence from people liking your Instagram
Yeah,
posts.
sure.
You get confidence from knowing deep down that you can trust yourself to do exactly what you said you would do.
Okay, so let's say you've conquered the alarm clock, you've done your reps, you're ready to face the day. But now you step out of your room and you are in the boarding house common room. You are suddenly surrounded by people.
Ah, the social jungle.
The social jungle. And this leads to what the source calls the boarding trap. Can you explain what that is for us?
The boarding trap is essentially the immense crushing pressure to conform. When you live in a really tight community like that, there is this huge gravitational pull to just be like everyone else.
To blend in.
Yeah, to talk the same way, dress the same way, dislike the exact same teachers, and unfortunately adopt the same bad habit.
It's survival, right? I mean, nobody wants to be the weird outlier.
It is entirely a survival instinct.
Yeah.
But the source brings in one of Bruce Lee's most famous quotes to counter this exact trap. He said, "Absorb what is useful, reject what is not, add what is uniquely your own."
Absorb what is useful. I love that phrasing. It sounds like a mental filter.
It is a filter. And it's crucial because in a boarding house, you're constantly being bombarded with different influences. And some of them are great. Maybe you have a friend who is incredibly organized with their notes.
So you absorb that.
You absorb that. That's a highly useful trait. But maybe that exact same friend also stays up until 3 in the morning playing video games and is failing half their classes.
You reject that.
Exactly. You reject it. The problem is that most students just take the whole package. They copy the entire person, not just the beneficial trait. The source makes this really sharp distinction between learning from others and becoming a copy.
It reminds me of that old saying that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The source is basically saying you need to carefully curate that average.
Spot on. And then there's the third part of Lee's quote, add what is uniquely your own. The text specifically says, you are not here to become a copy. You are here to become your best version.
That phrase, best version, is super interesting to me because it completely kills the competition aspect.
How do you mean?
Well, think about it. If I'm trying to be a copy of the most popular kid in the dorm, I'm essentially competing with him. But if I'm just trying to be the best version myself, I'm only competing with my own potential.
That's a massive insight.
Yeah.
And in a boarding environment, adopting that mindset is incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
You realize you don't have to be the best athlete or the smartest scholar in the entire school. You just have to be maximizing your own personal toolkit.
Right.
But, and here's the catch, being uniquely your own in a boarding house actually takes a lot of guts.
Oh, absolutely it does. Walking away from a group gossip session or choosing to stay in and study when literally everyone else is messing around in the hall, that actively makes you a target sometimes.
It does. But that is exactly where the martial artist mindset comes in. A true martial artist doesn't flinch just because the crowd suddenly moves one way. They plant their feet, they stand their ground. That kind of authenticity is a very real form of strength.
I want to shift gears a bit to how we actually get things done in this environment. We touched on prep earlier, but the source goes quite deep into the concept of deep focus.
Yes, this is Lee's core philosophy on efficiency.
And I have to say, reading this, it feels like the hardest one for a modern student to pull off. I mean, between phones constantly buzzing, laptops, and just the ambient noise of 50 kids in a dorm, true focus feels almost impossible.
It definitely feels endangered. But Lee was very clear on this. Focus is not about doing everything at once. It is about doing important things really well.
The source has this great equation that I actually wrote down. It says, focus turns time into progress.
It's such a brilliant way to view it. Think about it. Time is fixed. Everyone in that boarding school has the exact same 24 hours in a day. So why does one student get so far ahead while another just spins their wheels?
It's not just raw intelligence.
No, it's the conversion rate. It's how well they convert time to progress. And focus is the converter.
So what does deep focus actually look like in practice? Because it's so easy for us to sit here and say, just focus. But what does the source recommend a student actually do?
It gets quite specific. It talks about being fully present. And my absolute favorite application of this in the text isn't even academic. It's social. It highlights listening properly in conversations.
Wait, listening is classified as a form of focus.
Absolutely. Think about how most teenagers, and frankly, most adults, communicate. We're not really listening. We're just waiting for our turn to speak.
Oh man, guilty.
We're busy planning our witty comeback while the other person is still finishing their sentence. We all do it.
Yeah, we do.
But Lee would argue that is a fundamental lack of focus. You aren't present in the moment. To really listen, to shut down your own internal monologue and just absorb what someone else is saying, that is a serious discipline.
And in a boarding context where you're living with these people, that naturally builds much better relationships.
It builds massive trust. And then, of course, there is the academic application. The text calls it training with purpose. It argues heavily for quality over quantity.
Meaning, don't just stare at a book.
Right. Don't study for 3 hours with your phone buzzing every 2 minutes and Spotify playing in the background. Study for 45 minutes with absolute, unbroken intensity.
It's the difference between swinging a baseball bat wildly for an hour and just hitting the ball perfectly once.
Exactly. Lee was all about economy of motion. Don't waste energy. Distractions, just wasted energy.
Now, I want to move to what I think is probably the most volatile part of boarding life. Emotions.
The extreme highs and lows.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
tired, you're hungry, mock exams are coming up, and someone just used your favorite coffee mug without asking. The rage is very, very real.
The red mist descends.
It does, but the source material completely redefines what strength looks like in these heated moments. It says, martial arts are not about fighting, they are about control, balance, and calmness.
This is what we call the quiet power. In a school setting, we so often mistake volume for strength. The kid who shouts the loudest, who slams the door, who physically dominates the argument, they seem powerful.
Because they take up the most space in the room.
Right. But Bruce Lee teaches that real power is actually staying calm when others are losing it.
The source uses a very specific phrase here, responding instead of reacting. I really want to drill down on that. What is the actual practical difference between the two?
It's all about the gap. A reaction is instant. It's a pure reflex. Someone insults you, you immediately insult them back. Someone pushes you, you push them back. In that scenario, you are a puppet, and the other person is pulling your strings.
You've completely handed over your control to them.
Completely. But a response involves a gap. It's a microsecond where you pause, you process the emotion you're feeling, and you actively choose your next action. That tiny gap is where self-mastery lives.
So, practically speaking, let's say a teacher unfairly criticizes you in front of the whole class. The natural reaction is to snap back or maybe just sulk in your chair.
Which invariably gets you in trouble and ruins your entire day. The response is to feel that anger, acknowledge it internally, take a breath, and remain respectful in the moment. You handle this situation later when you have a cool head.
That sounds incredibly difficult for a teenager to do. Heck, it's difficult for me to do as an adult.
It's incredibly difficult. That's exactly why it's called mastery. It takes intense practice. The source lists several common scenarios. Feeling frustrated with house rules, dealing with conflict situations, feeling totally overwhelmed by work.
All daily occurrences in a school?
Yep. And in all of these, the goal isn't to somehow not feel emotions. Lee wasn't a robot. He had a temper too. The goal is simply not to be enslaved by those emotions.
It's the idea of being the eye of the storm. Everything is spinning around you, but you are still.
Yes. And think about the social hierarchy of a school again. The person who never loses their cool. The person who stays totally calm when everyone else is freaking out about a fire drill or a massive deadline.
People flock to them.
They do. That person commands enormous respect. And not through fear, but through their stability.
That's a great segue into our final theme for today, leadership and the infinite game.
This really brings all the threads together.
So Bruce Lee, Did he ever reach a point in his life where he sat back and said, okay, I'm done. I've learned all the kung fu. I'm finally perfect.
Never. Not once.
Yeah.
He was constantly evolving. He changed his fighting style. He changed his diet, his philosophy, right up until the day he died. He fundamentally viewed himself as an eternal student.
And the source puts a really positive spin on this for students. It explicitly says that being a work in progress is a good thing.
Which is actually very counterintuitive for high achievers.
How so?
Well, boarding schools are often just packed full of perfectionists.
Mhm.
These students feel like they need to be the absolute finished product by age 16. They think, I need to know my exact career path, get straight A's, and be the captain of the rugby team right now. It's an exhausting way to live.
It's crushing pressure.
It is. But the source steps in and essentially says, relax. You are supposed to be learning. The goal isn't to be perfect today. The goal is simply to be slightly better than you were yesterday. Step by step, day by day.
It beautifully pairs the existing structure of the school with the mindset of the student. It says, boarding gives you structure. Bruce Lee gives you the mindset to use that structure well.
That's the perfect synthesis. The school provides the skeleton, the timetable, the rules, the sports facilities. But your own self-mastery provides the muscle. And when you develop that muscle, you naturally become a leader.
But not necessarily the loud leader we talked about earlier.
No, not at all. The source heavily emphasizes leadership through example. We just talked about the calm student, the disciplined student. When you master yourself, people naturally start looking to you for direction.
Because you're stable.
Because you're stable. You really can't lead other people if you can't even lead yourself. If you can't manage to get yourself out of bed in the morning, how are you going to lead a dorm? If you can't control your own temper when you're annoyed, how are you going to mediate a dispute between two younger students?
It's impossible.
Right. Self-mastery is the absolute prerequisite for leadership.
Lead yourself first. I think that's the real bumper sticker for this whole document.
It really is.
We have covered a ton of ground today. We've gone from the daily alarm clock battle all the way to the philosophy of lifelong learning. Let's do a really quick recap for you listening, just to hold all this in your head.
Sure, let's break it down to the bare essentials.
Number 1, the internal opponent.
The real battle is always you versus you. Win the morning, win those small daily disciplines. That is what builds the foundation.
Number 2, authenticity.
Use the filter. Absorb what is useful from your peers. Reject what isn't. Don't just be a copy of someone else. Strive to be your own best version.
Number 3, deep focus.
Stop the multitasking. Be fully present, whether you're studying for a test or just listening to a friend talk. Turn your time into actual progress.
Number 4, emotional control.
Real strength is calmness under pressure. Remember to respond. Don't react. Be the eye of the storm.
And finally, the infinite game.
Understand that you're never truly done. Success isn't about beating the other guy. It's about beating who you were yesterday.
That last point. The source has this fantastic metric for success that I want to highlight. It says, success is not about being better than others. It is about being better than you were yesterday.
It's honestly the only metric that matters. It's fair, it's completely under your own control, and it's sustainable over a lifetime.
So this brings us to the end of our deep dive today. And as always, we like to leave you with something to really chew on. We started this whole thing by asking you to picture Bruce Lee standing in a dorm. But now I want to turn the camera around and point it directly at you.
The source material is very clear. The opponent is internal.
And that's a little uncomfortable, isn't it? Because it means we can't just blame the environment or the school anymore.
We completely lose the luxury of making excuses.
We do. So here is our provocative thought for you today. If your greatest opponent is truly yourself, what specific habit or reaction or deep-seated fear is actually defeating you right now?
Is it the snooze button every morning? Is it the fear of looking stupid so you sit there and don't ask questions in class? Or is it your temper when you get a little stressed out?
Identify that one thing. Find that one small daily battle where the internal opponent is currently winning. And ask yourself, how can I use this martial arts mindset to flip the score tomorrow?
You don't have to win the entire war in one day. You just have to win that one little battle.
Exactly. Go be better than yesterday. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.